Hello there. It is Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. This week's is another viewer submitted question. As per usual, if you have a question that you would like possibly answered in a weekly in real life video, feel free to submit it. Ideally have a question mark at the end, so that way it's easier for me to find, but I've got a long running list. Obviously anything too overly personal or stuff that breaks like YouTube terms of service, anything too like inside baseball or whatever, I can't talk about that, right? But otherwise, yeah, feel free to ask away, right? Anyway, the person who submitted this question, their username should be somewhere in the bottom third of the screen right about now, and they ask a very simple question. What video and audio editing programs do I use? What software do I use? This is a pretty easy one, pretty quick one. I use DaVinci Resolve for video editing, and for audio editing, I use Audacity. I've always actually used Audacity for audio editing. It's kind of, as far as I know, it's like the go-to that everyone uses, whether you're doing videos where you do need to edit audio, or you are perhaps doing a podcast or something. Audacity is the way to go. It's completely free. It's got a vast array of free plugins as well that you can use. I don't actually use any of them, though. I just use baseline Audacity. The program, it looks super duper old, right? It looks like it was definitely made a long time ago, but hey, it's free. It's excellent. It's, it's great. It's great. Highly recommend it. As for DaVinci Resolve, I've not always used that. I currently do use it. It's pretty good. I have, gosh, when was it? It was a few years ago during the Skyrim playthrough, kind of toward the middle of it, I think. I upgraded to the paid version of it, right? But before that, I believe for the entirety of the Skyrim playthrough, I used DaVinci Resolve. Now, before that, I used Hitfilm to edit video, and that was also free as well, completely free, and it had a paid version just as well. But I think the issue with Hitfilm is there's just less community support for it. There's less like online tutorials. There's fewer plugins that you could download if you wanted. It also seems to have fewer features, but what I will give Hitfilm is that it was incredibly easy for me to sort of pick up and learn. I think it is perhaps aimed at like amateurs or novices or like students, people just learning and trying to pick it up, because it was remarkably easy for me to learn, and a lot of, not all of it, but a lot of what I picked up there transferred over when I got the free version of DaVinci Resolve, which, like I said, I've upgraded since to the full paid version. I believe the free version, it had nearly every feature that I needed. It locked away some of the like various video transitions and stuff, but I don't use any like terribly wild ones. I mean, I've kind of experimented with a few here and there. I don't think it had like chroma key or 3D keying, I forget what it's called exactly, but stuff with like a green screen or a blue screen, I don't think it has that by default in the free version. And perhaps the biggest limiter of the free version is that it deliberately slows down render times. So if something would normally in the paid version render out within 10 minutes or less, you could easily see like half an hour, if not more, right? So, hey, getting the paid version of that was definitely worthwhile for me. And as I've said in the past, I no longer have to, because of that, I no longer have to sort of stagger my sort of renderings whenever I want to render out a video, because of course we do the brief little opening and the little outro, the end screen. It's not just completely raw and uncut. But that absolutely saves a lot of time. I can do it more just freely throughout the day rather than making it like, oh, I need to set this up to happen at night. But true enough, when I was a lot more resource limited, I rendered them out at night as I slept if I had the time for it, right? There were a few times I got caught out with my pants down, so to speak. But otherwise, it worked out good enough. As for the free version, I absolutely recommend the free version of DaVinci Resolve. Like I said, it's a bit tougher to learn than Hitfilm. It's got a lot more features, and probably 75% of them I don't even use and don't even know how to use, I'll be honest. I just use what I need to, and if I need to learn something else, I just look up an online tutorial. That's how I learned how to use all of it and just produce videos in totality. There's just a wealth of online tutorials about how video and audio editing software works. And of course, recording software, which, you know, the go-to these days is OBS, Open Broadcast Software, which is also free. There's also loads of tutorials about that online. Before I used OBS to record footage and audio, like, directly, it used to be I had backups. I would run video recording software that also picked up my mic in conjunction with recording Audacity, but I don't do that anymore. It's gotten to the point where it's not necessary. It's pretty redundant and uses up like a whole bunch of extra space I don't really need to worry about. And there's probably some sort of minute performance hit. But before that, before OBS, I used NVIDIA's Shadowplay, I think it's called. I used that for quite some time because when I first got started, depending on the game, I didn't have a computer that could record that well, right? This was before I think OBS had full-on NVenc support, if you know what that means, which I guess for the uninitiated, that is where prior to that, the standard was for video recording software to be very CPU intensive and very CPU heavy, right? And of course, if you know a lot about building your own computer or just computers in general, it tends to be when you have a computer that you've kept for a while, the bottleneck ends up becoming the CPU, because if you do want to upgrade, it's so much easier to upgrade your GPU, your graphics card, compared to your CPU, because, well, in some cases, you just flat out cannot upgrade your CPU because it's so, it's so integral to the entirety of the system of the computer. But nonetheless, that is what I did, and that is kind of the situation I was in. But these days, we've got NVenc, and of course, Shadowplay, originally, I believe, had very early adoption for it. And even when it was CPU focused, and of course, it being an NVIDIA sort of piece of software, I don't even know if they have it anymore. I'm not even sure if it exists. I'd assume so, right? But being as it is like proprietary NVIDIA software, it was early and quick to get official NVenc support, given, it's made by the same company. But OBS now has that as well, just kind of baked in. And that is also kind of part and parcel why I have a general preference toward NVIDIA chipsets when it comes to graphics cards, is because of the NVenc support. It's just unquestionably incredibly useful, right? Like, if I were just playing games, I wouldn't mind. Like, I've certainly used like Radeon cards before in the past. For the longest time, I played World of Warcraft and TF2 on a Sapphire. But undeniably, having NVenc and NVIDIA's NVenc at your fingertips makes rendering out videos and recording them super duper easy and way lower impact. It's fantastic. Absolutely recommend it if you are looking to get something along those lines. Of course, folks these days also run like dual desktop recording setups where you play on one game, but then use the other for just recording and editing, right? So you have pretty much zero impact. But, I don't know, that's pretty expensive, right? That's pretty expensive. That's quite the tall order, I think. And sometimes you do run into issues with that, I've heard, right? Where sometimes it overly complicates the situation, right? So whenever you do run into a snag with an update or like a specific hardware part fails down the line, you run into issues with like trying to troubleshoot or whatever, right? You have just that many more moving parts that you have to sort of suss out whatever is the culprit. But yeah, NVenc, super good. It's in OBS. Even DaVinci Resolve supports it for encoding videos, rendering them out, as I say. It's really good, really fantastic. Absolutely recommend that. For DaVinci Resolve, I almost forgot, the paid version. I used that, and also, by the way, I'm pretty sure, very much enjoy his little, like, I don't know, similar to this, very similar to these videos. Last week, a gentle viewer wrote in, joking about the similarities. But Tim Cain's videos, right? The sort of one of the creators of the original Fallout games back in the day, as well as many others, right? Behind the scenes, working on many other games like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, The Outer Worlds, stuff like that. Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic. Dude was behind a whole bunch. Super chill and cool seeming dude. Has his own YouTube channel. Absolutely recommend it. I am convinced that guy uses the exact same video editor that I do, that he also uses DaVinci Resolve, because I've noticed when he started doing his videos as well, I think he uses sort of down here, right? I've got the like title template. That's just a default template that I use. I don't change it around. I intentionally keep it very simple, where it's got like the subtitle at the top and then the larger text at the bottom. That's just a default setting in DaVinci Resolve. And he puts his there at the beginning of his videos, which, you know, makes sense. It's like a standard, right? It's if it were an industry, it would be an industry standard to do such a thing like that, you know, bottom 2/3 text going around or whatever. But his looks incredibly similar to mine, same font, I think, same sizing and everything. I'm pretty sure he uses the exact same one, or I'm pretty sure he uses the default. I would not be surprised if that were the case. But it is very good. The paid version, which has all these extra features and isn't limited on like the speed at which it runs. And I think maybe they lock NVIDIA NVenc behind the paid version. But one of the things I really like about the paid version of it, if you are in the market to actually buy video editing software, is that you just buy it, right? You just buy it once. I bought it once a few years ago, and now I just have it forever, and they update it, and I get the updates for it, and it continues to function, right? It's a product that they patch and update. It's very nice. It's very, very wonderful. It's how you would expect things to work. However, that's not always the case, right? If you're familiar with a lot of other video editing software, you will know that DaVinci Resolve is sort of, it isn't like the Premiere. Well, it isn't Premiere, is it? But Jesus, it's not the tip top of what is most commonly used. You hear about things like Adobe Premiere or Sony Vegas Pro, I think, is the other one. But nonetheless, Adobe I know for sure, and I think Sony Vegas as well, but I don't want to speak out of pocket. But Adobe, of course, very well known for a lot of their super useful software, not just Premiere, but also their sort of photo manipulation stuff, right? Photoshop. That you have to pay a monthly subscription for, right? Which is hell, I think. That's a nightmare. I just want to buy the software. I will just, like, save up the money, lay down, like, whatever large sum of money. That way I can just have it forever in perpetuity and not have to pay a monthly sub and have this drain consistently, because I plan on doing this for quite some time. I think it's like pretty hellish, actually. But hey, DaVinci Resolve doesn't do any of that. They cut that shit out. Thank goodness. Another reason why I recommend it wholeheartedly over the Adobe stuff, right? And of course, speaking of Adobe, speaking of Photoshop, for thumbnails, I don't use Photoshop either, right? I am incredibly cheap. I will definitely buy, like I said, I will pay for the paid version of DaVinci Resolve, right? I did it. I very much enjoy the way it works and functions and all of that. But when it comes to monthly subscriptions and all that, like I said, I just don't enjoy that whatsoever. So I don't use Photoshop. For my thumbnails, I use GIMP. I forget what it stands for, but it's been around for quite some time, and it is also freeware. It is basically the free version of Photoshop, right? And it's got like a wealth of community-made sort of plugins and mods and whatnot that add features that are akin to Photoshop, and there's also some degree of cross-compatibility with like various fonts you can get for Photoshop. You can plug them in for GIMP. That's how I sort of keyed in on finding the Skyrim like quest text font, the in-game font, not like the title screen or whatever, but like the in-game font, you know, that sort of elongated, very contemporary looking font that Skyrim uses. I got that through the same means, right? But yeah, absolutely recommend that. That's what I use for thumbnails. That's what I use for recording video, editing audio. You can actually, of course, apply filters in OBS for your audio to make it sound better without having to do as much editing. And I'm still always kind of toying around with it when I have the time. But of course, I don't always have the time because it's kind of a big ask. Like, do I want to try out like some new sort of compressor situation with OBS to filter that and then potentially have it go wrong, right? And then I have to spend so-and-so amount of time on that when I could just be recording another video or whatever, or relaxing or tending to an errand in real life, like doing laundry or whatever, right? So it's kind of something that I just eternally keep putting on the back burner. It's definitely something I ought to do sooner rather than later, but like I said, I'm just like a lazy bastard, I guess. But you can accomplish that. However, it doesn't quite have the same breadth of detail and usability as Audacity, right? Filtering your audio or running audio filters on OBS. It's not quite the same as recording it originally and then having that raw data there, exporting that out of OBS, the OBS audio files. This is what I do. Okay, I record multiple tracks of audio through OBS. I've got like the game itself, and I've got another track on OBS for my audio speaking into the mic, right? This way I'm like able to cut it up for shorts a lot more easily. You'll notice whenever I do shorts, the timing from the original video can sometimes be off. That's because I save those videos and those files, and that way I can make it hit quicker. Because, you know, for shorts and stuff like that, you have a far lower degree of time, right? You've only got a minute or less to sort of get on with it. That helps immensely to just be able to cut it around. Like if there's something that I want to show, but what I'm saying and what I want people to hear me say is happening at a different time, I can basically have that time to where I don't need to have part of the clip be, oh, I'm showing you this and then I'm talking. I can say I'm talking and then immediately see it right at the end, right? Right after I say something. So it punches a lot better. But what I do is I run the OBS raw video file through there, split up the audio tracks, export them through DaVinci Resolve, pull those out with Audacity, run those through Audacity modulators, so I get like normalization, compression, equalization, all this stuff that sort of makes it to where peaks aren't so high and the valleys aren't so low, right? That way, sort of, it's roughly a more pleasant listening experience, right? If you've ever toyed around with audio, you know that just running something through a compressor will make it sound already so much better. If you're just getting into this, absolutely recommend looking into, at minimum, compressor settings and just trying out a few that people recommend. Like I said, there's no shortage of tutorials for this freeware that exists out there. I'm completely self-taught to a fault. If anything. Speaking of which, oh my gosh, I almost forgot. I have to recommend my old friend for decades now, I guess, going on decades, at least a decade plus, Epos Vox, who runs their own channel that sort of focuses on software such as this, right? They do a lot of OBS stuff. They have their own YouTube channel, Epos Vox. meant to be like, you know, play on epic voice or whatever, right? Because, you know, they deal in a whole lot of similar stuff to do with, you know, like speaking into a microphone or looking at a camera and speaking. But yeah, they do a whole bunch of tutorials on OBS and as well as DaVinci Resolve and whatnot. Highly recommend it. Like I said, there's no shortage of tutorials if you need something like that. No shortage of sort of free available plugins, right? Very good stuff. I think that's it. I think that's all that I have to mention about that. Is there anything else as far as like recording software and editing software? I don't think so. I'm trying to look down here at my like taskbar, what I use. No, I think that's it. Yeah, and I'm trying to think back as to what I used to use. Now, I always used the same thing for my thumbnails, same thing for audio. Yep, that ought to do it. All right. Hopefully this helps out anyone looking for this. I know I get this question every so often. I can't imagine this will be like a super popular question immediately, but as was the original impetus of the in real life videos, especially Q&A, whenever someone has a question, I can just refer them to the most recent video that I did in real life that sort of discusses that, right? So you've probably already seen, likely, that I've done this, particularly in the case of where someone asks, oh, are you going to play this game on the channel, right? This has proven out to be such a great thing for me to have done. Right, I'm absolutely loving it, right? Every time I get the chance to do it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm nailing it. I'm getting that extra degree of value, of use, of worthwhileness out of this little endeavor. Wherein someone asks, oh, are you going to play, I don't know, Fallout 4? And if I notice and remember, if I'm like at my computer, right? Sometimes I see it, I'm at my phone and I forget, unfortunately. But if I'm at my computer responding to comments, I'm ready for that. I can just say, oh, yeah, I am. And if you want the long version of that or want to see more of what is on my to-do list, here's a link to an in real life video where I talk about that exact thing. I absolutely love every chance I get to sort of talk about that. And, right, this is another similar one of those videos going forward, wherein I guess we can record another one rather than the sort of to-do list, which I plan to update yearly. This one we can, if ever I start using different software, I guess, and remember to do another in real life video about this, we can update it. But, hey, for the time being, that ought to do it. Till next time, please take care of each other.